My name's Ollie, and this is Joe. And we've been working on AI market intelligence and digital commodity consultancy services at Macrovesta for the last few years. AI is on the cusp of revolutionizing many industries, and cotton is no exception. Today, we'd like to share some stories and trends from the cotton industry, as well as other industries that are shaping the AI landscape for this industry. I'll now pass over to Joe, who's going to explain to you what is AI and how does it work.
So I first want to talk about AI in real simple terms. So the way I can explain that is I'd like to compare it to teaching a child a task for the first time. So at first, a child doesn't know how to do the task, but when you provide enough examples and you give enough guidance and reinforcement, the task can be done unsupervised. So this is no different with artificial intelligence. So an example that I have is an AI created for Ford and Nissan, which was to locate defects and scratches on brand new cars that come off the production line. And the way I train this AI model, or the AI brain, is to provide countless images of defects and scratches to the AI until it starts to learn the pattern and spot this and learn how to spot these scratches and defects on its own unsupervised. And so whereas before we had people going around these cars looking for scratches and defects, taking hours, we can now have camera systems that new cars drive through. It can spot them in seconds. So this saves a lot of time and a lot of money, and it can do things at a lot faster rate and a higher accuracy. So I'm going to pass you over to Ollie, who's going to talk about I'm going to talk about
demystifying AI.
Demystifying AI, there we go.
Thank you, Joe. So you can think of AI as as a single employee who never tires, and regardless of how repetitive a task, it's never going to complain. And it'll work while you sleep, by taking all of those monotonous tasks and turning them into automation. It can free you up to focus on the truly human tasks, the creative, imaginative, strategic ones that really propel industries forwards. And it's not just the simple ones. It's not just the simple tasks. The beauty of AI is you can take thousands, hundreds of thousands of data points and consolidate that data into a single line or a simple explanation. So through that, it enables an amazing power for collaboration, an amazing potential for collaboration. So it's not just, while AI can do all of those repetitive things, it can also work with you to make your job more engaging, more, improve your satisfaction, your ability to make difficult decisions quicker. And so I'm now going to move on to talk about what the tipping point might be in the cotton industry, where we're going to see a lot more AI solutions. So to start with, I'm going to start with a story of the first billion-dollar AI solution. And that was in fraud detection in the banking industry. And why was that so prolific? Well, in that instance, AI enhanced rather than disrupted. And often, it starts with that simple swap. So in fraud detection, you had a team of people who would look through a set of criteria for certain behavior. They try to spot where fraud might be occurring. You'd then get a call from the team. They'd say, were you victim to fraudulent activity? Yes or no. And then, regardless of the answer, they'd go back to their same rules, and they'd just try it. They'd go again. Now, with AI, it can take that feedback, that yes or no answer, and it can say, okay, well, what were the behavioral nuances? What were the things that occurred that meant that this instance was a piece of fraudulent activity? So now banks across the world have adopted this technology, this simple swap, replacing that team with a faster, more accurate AI model. In the cotton sector, the parallels could be drawn between things like arbitration and legal document review. And in fact, there are legal document review softwares readily available already that are 80% faster and more accurate than their human counterpart. But of course, many of you in this room will be in spinning, in logistics, in lots of other very complex parts of the supply chain, but there's a lot of moving parts, and simply putting an AI solution into your business won't necessarily be a perfect fit. So how do you get it there? How do you make it a perfect fit? Well, it might be something like explainable AI, where instead of being a black box solution, you have more transparency over decision-making, better explanations, and it can empower you to make some better decisions. Now, over the next few slides, Joe and I are going to look at different areas of the cotton industry and how AI might be applied based on current industry trends.
Great. So before I just get onto trading success, I just want to make a point that from today's presentation, I'd really like you to get an understanding of how you might be able to apply AI to your own industries. And so before, as we've talked about different examples, myself and Ollie, try and look at for the examples that you have in your industry that are very repetitive, things that you have data for, things that are costing you time and money. And then when you start thinking about what data you might have to train an AI model, or the simple examples that we had before, you're starting on the right thought process to think about how you can optimize your industries. And you can start having discussions with tech people and have to build requirements about things you have available that tech teams can use to actually apply it. And so this can save you a lot of time and a lot of money, and it can be easily implemented. So going on to trading success, so the hedge funds have done very well in trading. So last year, we had record trading profits of $104 billion US. And this happened in the same year. In the same year, we had record AI recruitment drive for jobs in marketing and finance. So in fact, 70% of trades are now made by algorithmic AI trading algorithms. So there's a very huge uptake in AI in market intelligence. And you might think that the hedge funds are the only people that have all this technology available, but that is changing. Now, other people outside of hedge funds can start using tools that are available at a lot lower cost and are also very powerful to help people become more competitive in the trading space. So, moving on to market intelligence. So what is market intelligence? So market intelligence is analyzing data to predict price movements so we can make better financial decisions at reduced risk. So whereas traditionally an analyst might be looking at more limited data sets, CFTC, WASD, there is now a huge influx of data that could be made, that could be leveraged, but it's becoming increasingly more challenging for a single person to use all this data and make effective decisions. So AI can help here by centralizing all this data and analyzing it and pulling things out that are of real use. And so whereas before the trader might be working on certain data sets, there might be information that provide critical insights which otherwise would have been missed. So in terms of, with traders, so with these two types of AI, as Ollie was explained before, there's explainable AI and there's black box. So hedge funds tend to use a lot of black box solutions, which can be very powerful. And what I mean by black box solutions is that they make the trades without human in the loop. It's fully autonomous, and this has a lot of benefits. The fact that there's no human in the loop to be emotional, make emotional decisions, so they can be more consistent. However, there are some factors that are limiting. So, for example, they are not as good at predicting black swan events that might have never happened before, and so they don't know how to do it. AIs are trained on previous historic data, so if there's nothing there, then it doesn't know how to handle it. So they do need to be treated with caution. Also, they're not as explainable. It's harder to trust what they are doing because you can't really see why it's making those decisions. So this is where explainable AI is a bit more useful. So the additional thing is traders and analysts can't provide as easily their influence and their knowledge from the years they've learned to apply to an AI. So there's not a combinationary benefit when you're using a black box solution. However, there are other things in AI that can help the traders. And so I don't think AI is going to be taking over traders and analyst jobs anytime soon. I think all it's going to do is the same as other industries like coders. They're going to help elevate people with tools that are going to be made available by critical insights. And this is where explainable AI can help. So with all these critical insights, it can analyze the market and provide textual-based information that can help elevate. And so this could be things like anomaly detection. It can scour all these huge data sets and find anomalies which might be of interest to people to move markets. And this can be very valuable to a trader who looks at certain data sets they normally look at. So it's a very valuable way to elevate people's jobs and provide more data and be able to process this data a bit more effectively. So I'll pass you over to Ollie.
Thank you, Joe. So now looking across the supply chain, many of you in the audience may be in the spinning industry. Now there are a lot of trends across manufacturing sectors where AI is being adopted. In fact, Deloitte recently produced a report that said 1 in 4 manufacturing businesses are now using AI. And why is that? Well, manufacturing is a data powerhouse. You have every machine can produce data at very regular high-frequency intervals, and it becomes far easier to introduce AI solutions when this data is readily available. So as Joe mentioned, when he worked for Ford and Nissan, he was scanning cars at the end of a production line. So of course, quality control is one way in which manufacturing businesses are using AI. However, things like resource management, AI is very good at saying, here is everything that I have in my factory, here are all the people I've got, here are the machines, here is my production schedule. Can you just sort it out and organize it for me? Well, that's something that AI can do. AI has the power to consolidate all of that information and give you what the most efficient schedule would look like. Similarly, there are things like predictive maintenance. So rather than waiting for a machine to break down, if you fit enough sensors and you're looking for the right markers, for example, let's take in a spinning mill, if you're listening for the sound of a spindle before it breaks down, or something, a key marker that maybe only an expert would be able to detect, with sensors, with AI, that becomes far easier to adopt in your production environment, and it can enable you to limit the amount of downtime there is. And again, going back to market intelligence, through things like market intelligence, we can forecast demand far better than previously, and allow us to adjust production schedules in accordance with that. Now, a lot of these technologies aren't yet being adopted by spinning mills en masse, but these are the trends that we're seeing in multiple other industries, and the technology is here. It's time to embrace it. So going back from the mills to the farms, precision agriculture, there's a lot to be excited about. From drone technology, where you basically have a master farmer in the sky, surveying your fields, looking for the areas, the problem areas, the things that really need the resources, right? And in doing so, in scanning those fields, some of this technology has reduced input costs by 50%, and improved yield by 20 to 30%. Right? Going higher than drones to satellites, satellite yield prediction has been proven to be 90% accurate for many large farms. And similarly with those satellites, now I'm sure many of you woke up this morning and thought, oh, I'm in Liverpool, and I'm probably going to it's probably going to be raining. Let's have a look at the weather forecast this morning. So you got your weather app up, and it said, 90% chance of rain, which is how it is 365 days of the year in Liverpool. But you might have got lucky, and you might have walked here without a drop of rain. Now, that's great for you, and you might think, well, I got lucky this morning. But the farmer who checks his regional weather forecast and sees that there's going to be rain due, and none hits their field, that's not so useful. So with weather AI, micro weather AI, farmers are able to pinpoint exactly how much water is reaching their fields and their land and plan accordingly, reduce the amount of resources that they need to use. Going down to ground level, you have technology sensors on the ground looking for weeds, and they will, things like see and spray technology where spot a weed and it's sprayed with herbicides. Things like that are reducing herbicide use by 75% for many producers. So what's so exciting about precision agriculture is that it is naturally more sustainable. You waste less, you get better resources, you get better productivity out of what you do use, and you produce more crops. So Now, joining the two, spinning across to, obviously there's, across the supply chain. So looking across the supply chain, going back to that demand forecasting, things like inventory management, working out what's needed, when it's needed, streamlining things like made-to-order processes. Amazon do a fantastic job of this. Of course, many of you will have ordered something one morning and it ends up on your doorstep that evening. How did they know to keep that in stock? Well, it's all AI. It's all smart inventory management. Similarly, quality control is something we keep coming back to. And with things like smart sensors, you could, in theory, scan a bale of cotton non-invasively, work out the quality of that cotton. With enough markers, enough information, in theory, you could work out the growing conditions for that bale and potentially even the likely origin. With enough data, AI can improve traceability and transparency throughout a supply chain. With things like embedded fibers, we can embed bits of data from each stage of the supply chain, and using something like a large language model, you could extrapolate all of that data and you could tell the story from seed to garment right the way along the supply chain, just by using what to the rest of us would look like meaningless data. But with things like large language models, you can provide the story, provide the narrative, tell the story of a garment. Again, risk management. So with risk management, scanning macroeconomic events, working out where potential supply chain disruptions might occur. With AI, that becomes possible. You can be more proactive with the way that you map out your trade routes, your logistics. Something that DHL do very well with their AI technology. Now, of course, the two examples that I've given on this slide were Amazon and DHL. And it's unlikely there's many of you in the audience who think of their businesses on the same scale. But often the biggest barrier to AI adoption is the availability of data and quality of data. And we live in a data age where this technology is becoming increasingly accessible to businesses of all sizes. So the time is now to embrace AI technology, to maximize your productivity, to reduce the amount of waste you create, to enhance your decision-making, to become naturally more sustainable. And those that adopt this technology, you will secure a competitive edge. You are supercharged with this technology. The speed at which you can push out solutions, innovations, is going to be so much faster than everybody that isn't using this technology. So before I welcome our panel, and we move on to our panel discussion, I'd like to leave you with a thought. What in your job are the truly human tasks, the ones that you really enjoy, the ones that can really propel your industry forwards? And what's everything else? What are all those other jobs? And which of those other jobs do you have data for? Which of those other jobs could you potentially introduce AI and free up more of your time to focus on what is truly human and what you really enjoy? So I'd now like to welcome Jagan from Arvind up to the stage for a brief panel discussion. Thank you very much. Take a seat. So to start with, I'd like to understand from both of your perspectives, what are the greatest barriers to the adoption of AI in the cotton industry, and how do you think they'll be overcome?
Okay, first of all, Oli and Joe, thank you for setting that wonderful base for this panel discussion, because this is a relatively new topic that many of us are not much familiar with. So that was a great introduction from your side. Now, specifically coming to your question, now before answering that, we need to understand that AI is one of the technology vectors out of the 4 main technology vectors that have converged since the beginning of the 21st century. One is big data. By big data, I'm referring to tremendously large amount of data amounting to petabytes. Now, kilobyte is 10 raised to 3 byte, megabyte is 10 raised to 6, and giga is 10 raised to 9, tera is 10 raised to 12, and peta is 10 raised to 15. So we're talking about very large amount of data. So one of the points that they were trying to highlight is that if you have access to good quality of data and huge volume of data, that will help train the algorithm systems, and that will help you fine-tune the efficiency that you can derive from these interventions. So the second is what we call as the cloud computing. Now, most of you must be familiar with Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. These are cloud computing services. The third is the AI part of it that they already explained. And the fourth one is what is called as the Internet of Things. It is nothing but the sensors that are embedded in the machines that we operate in our everyday life. So the classic example to understand how these four technological vectors have combined is to look at the example of Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce was an aircraft engine manufacturing company that was selling their machines to the aircraft operators. Now, one of the big problems that the aircraft operators faced was that when these machines are not flying, they are incurring a loss. They want to keep these machines up and flying to the maximum extent possible. The another issue was that we don't know, they never know which equipment or which component is going to fail and lead to downtime. So what they did, so Rolls-Royce understood these issues that were faced by their customers. So what they did is that through the combination of those four technology vectors, they embedded their engines with millions of IoT sensors. And when these machines are flying, they will relay the performance aspect of the data related to that to a cloud, which goes into a centralized database. AI is applied on that. And then they come out with predictive maintenance, looking at the performance of each component, looking at the graph of it. They come out with predictive maintenance, and then ultimately it helped their customer save a lot of money on the downtimes because it got minimized to a great extent, and they were also able to spare the money that they were investing on inventory. Now, through this, Rolls-Royce transitioned themselves from an aircraft engine manufacturing and selling company to a product as a service model. So they are no longer selling their aircraft engine. That's the beauty of this model. By leveraging technology, they have converted that into an engine renting model, fly-by-hour basis. So this is one base that I wanted to set here. Now responding specifically to your question about the likely barriers that are there in the case of adoption. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that we from the textile industry, those incumbent manufacturing companies do, is to look at this purely as a technological intervention. See, investing in technology is not the same as investing in digital transformation. If that were the case, then two companies, A and B, who have the necessary capital to invest in a technology, they both would have invested in the same technology and they both would have derived the same result, but that's not the case. So the business model comes first. In the case of Rolls-Royce, they were absolutely clear that what were the pain points that they were trying to address, and then they leveraged the technology which acted as an enabler for changing their business model. So if you ask me, now I represent Arvind, which is one of the largest integrated textile firms in the world and also in India. Now, if you ask me what business are we in, I can in simple terms say that we are in the business of manufacturing fabric and selling it to major retailers and brands, and we also undertake garmenting. That is one way of explaining what my company does. The other way of explaining it is to say that I am in the business of providing clothing solutions to a global audience in a commercially profitable, socially responsible, and environmentally sustainable manner.
So, Jagan, in a sentence, in the textile industry, to summarize everything you said, so if you had like 2 bullet points, what are the biggest trust points? What biggest points that are barriers to using AI in manufacturing are adoption into the actual mechanics?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So one is that not looking at the business model first and just looking at technology as such in isolation, and the technology not gelling with the entire business model or the manufacturing operation. So that is a big barrier.
Great.
The second barrier is the cultural barriers related to change. For example, a company that is very hierarchically driven, right? It serves a purpose in so far what we have done. But when we are responding to these kind of disruptive technologies, which could also be positive to us in the long run, there we need to be absolutely clear that we are prepping the entire organization in terms of relooking at the organization structure, in terms of relooking at the skill set of the people who are running the organization, in terms of the ability to take risks. So I would say that it is more related to the cultural aspects that stand out as a barrier.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we will get on to merging the traditional dynamics and culture within the industry with these technology advances. But Joe, if you could summarize from your perspective what you view as the barriers to adoption of AI in your field.
So from my perspective, I've been in 3 startups now, very different, medical, cars, and construction. And the problem I can see with it is a lack of understanding from people that don't use it and understand the application, and trust. And there's also seems to be a lack of integration between tech people and people from industries that don't use it. And this non-knowledge and no barriers and in between people to facilitate these conversations is becoming a barrier. So I do think it's trust, and I think that's the primary thing. And what does trust mean? It means, like, do I trust an investment to something I don't understand that is already working perfectly? The cotton industry works very well as it is, and there's this new thing coming, and why fix what's not broken? But you do risk many opportunities by not at least looking into it. Even if you are a skeptic, there's no reason not having a conversation. And if it was me, and I was on a different side, what I'd want to do is at least understand the risk and the opportunities that I'm missing out on. And then that's as easy as calling up an AI consultant and discussing what things can be done. Discuss what data you have, discuss the problems you have, and ask them exactly how can this be solved. And they will give you quantitative metrics. Like, that's part of my job, is to provide actual metrics on what we think we could save, down to the numbers. I think opening up that conversation, just taking a step to have a look, is a very valuable thing you could do, and it could save you a lot of money. So going back to the example of Ford and Nissan, they have saved millions by setting up a camera system. These people cost a lot of money, but it's not only replacing the jobs, it's also replacing jobs. It's recruitment. People don't want to do these jobs. Like they literally can't find people that want to go around cars looking for scratches. No one wants to do that. So what they've done is they've created systems that saves them thousands of pounds and all the issues of recruitment. So if you can spot any of those issues, you can definitely find people that can help you with your problems. So I think basically going back to it is trust, I think.
Trust
and awareness.
Problem orientation. So rather than viewing it as a piece of technology that you have to work for, the technology is there to work for you. So it goes back to the what we were trying to say earlier of how do you embrace AI in your businesses? Well, you've got to find the problem first. You don't look at the technology as a whole. You have to figure out what are the problems in your businesses that are suitable to be replaced with AI or to be assisted by AI.
And Joe also made a very interesting point about why fix something that is already working well for the company. That is a big dilemma. So there is a Harvard University professor, Professor Clayton Christensen, who in his Innovator's Dilemma, that is the name of the book that he has written, he has mentioned specifically about this point, that many companies feel that things are working well. Why should I change something that is working well for me? It becomes a dilemma for them.
Yeah. So if we can, we'll move on to our next question. So our next question is just a quick one. I just want to get an idea of, with both of you working in the technology field, what are you most excited about with regard to AI technology in your field?
So from my side, obviously I'm a bit biased. You've heard me talk enough about market forecasting, so I won't bore you any more about that. But I do, from my side, I'm a developer and I lead tech teams. And we're obviously very close to AI because so one of the industry hits first. And what I can see is the coders that I have, the developers, are working at least 3 times the rate they were doing. And that means that we can get stuff done a lot faster and it can be done a lot cheaper. And also means that we can make a lot more elaborate products and projects get to market and get delivered quicker. So from my industry, it's really affected the way we code. A lot of it's written out by AI now. So we can just think of the high level things. So when Ollie was talking about before, about some of these, where do we how do we do the things we truly want to do? Well, I don't want to be sitting there coding line by line. I can think of ideas and have it code for me. So I'm operating at a high level. And I think this similar pattern will affect everyone else. So ChatGPT, a lot of people writing their emails with it these days. It's a higher level thinking. And I think this trend is going to keep going up. So I'm excited about code. That's my part. So that's me.
And Jagan, how about yourself?
Yeah, from the cotton and the textile industry, there is data that proves that after 2008 financial crisis, and especially after the US Fed started the quantitative easing, there was a tremendous inflow of cheap money into the global commodity and the financial markets. And this has magnified the price volatility that we are seeing across commodity. So one of the biggest applications that I see, which has potentially, is that how to minimize the price risk, not just the price risk management, but also the margin appropriation possibilities that are available when there is volatility in the market. Some of the points that Colin touched earlier, how to develop a proper system out of it, how to develop a system in collaboration with the ecosystem partners. This is one possibility. The second possibility is the possibility of intelligent designs, the possibility of co-creating designs with your customers. The 3D visualizations that are possible. Today there is possibility with the help of AI of virtual factory twins, setting up virtual factory twins, setting up virtual showroom twins where you can test out all your ideas without necessarily going through that physical process of prototyping to piloting an idea to all the way up to taking the garments to the retail outlet. So this entire cycle time can be crashed. So if you ask me, the two major interventions are the price risk management possibility and the co-creation of design possibilities.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, we're going to move on to our final question here before we welcome some questions from the audience. And perhaps this question itself might spark some ideas from people in the audience, so I'd welcome contributions there too. How will the cotton industry look in 5 to 10 years' time? What will be different and what won't change?
Well, probably it's difficult to answer that question as to what will change in the next 5 to 10 years. But broadly, what will definitely happen is that there will be more and more consolidation across the manufacturing industry space. I mean, smaller firms will definitely be taken up by the larger and the more efficient firms. So I see the possibility of higher level of consolidations happening. Second is that cotton as such will keep losing market share to man-made fiber because of the higher functionality that man-made fiber can offer. I'm not talking about cotton losing the volume in absolute terms. So we are talking about 115 to 120 million bales consumption. It might remain the same, but as the larger pool of consumption goes up, the man-made fibers in percentage terms will take more and more shares away from cotton. The interaction between the trading community and the mill community, it will remain the same, but it will also undergo a qualitative change in terms of those merchants who are better able to understand the pain points that the customers are facing, able to provide them solutions that are enabled by technology. They will continue to gain market share compared to those merchants who are just engaging with the spinning community on a transactional basis. These are the couple of things that I see changing.
And Joe, how about yourself? I mean, you haven't been in this industry as long as Jagan, but I suppose you probably have a slightly different perspective.
I think, so I've not been in cotton, I'm an AI, I create AIs across markets. But from what I've seen across industries, we can see an uptake in better quality control that's faster, as I've discussed with Ford and Nissan. I can't see any reason why that can't start being the case in cotton. There could be sensors, for example, that look at where traceability and things like that will be done very quickly. I'm sure those discussions are probably happening already. So quality control, definitely legislation. There's a lot of dated software that people use, and the things can make mistakes. It can make things, cause legal problems. I think there'll be a lot of anomaly detection, such as with banking. They've done it. I think a lot of the legislation and bills and things like that will be looked at by AI. So I think there'll be a big movement there. I think predictive maintenance is going to be a big one. It costs a lot of money. So at the moment, you can, even using sound waves, you can predict when something's about to break. Like simple solutions that can just adapt, can see if there are problems. So a lot of predictive maintenance, which would be very good. And I think one of the other big things is blockchain as well. So it's not just AI, blockchain's coming in pretty hard. So there's things like deepfake and things like that. And being able to reduce fraud, blockchain can help a lot there as well in terms of verifying a lot of the scary things that AI are bringing. So this is going to be, I think, a big movement of blockchain, things like crypto, decentralized, especially in the finance, and there will be, I think it will affect the financial markets there as well. I think there's going to be a lot of movement to more seamless and easier life with all the manual tasks that we're facing at the moment, essentially.
And much more integration in the value chain between the retailers and the brands and the manufacturing companies and the multinational companies and the farmers.
Yeah, greater customization and
yes,
more personal, more of a tailored industry.
Yes,
I suppose, if you're pardon the pun. But then I suppose from my perspective, one thing I would want to add about what I don't see changing, things like the ICA. You know, we're all here today. We've spent the last few days speaking with each other. This is ultimately a relationship-based industry, and that's never going to change with AI. You know, maybe you might get a few more emails that are written by AI, but the actual, you know, the message, the way that it's been, you know, the people that you're speaking to, these interactions, these sorts of events, I don't see that going away. I think, if anything, we might have more time. Maybe we'll spend you know, we'll have even more events, because socializing, building those relationships, you know, trust, having the trust in the people that we work with becomes an increasingly important part of this. You know, we spoke briefly earlier about deep fakes and how will it make, you know, the big TV channels actually more popular because they know you can trust them. You know, with increased technology, people do gravitate towards human connection still. You know, there's still always going to be, that to me will not change 5, 10, 20, 50 years, wherever we look at this industry. You know, this industry, the technology may change, but the interactions, they don't. So I'd now like to welcome any contributions from the audience, either to answering these questions or any questions that you might have with regard to AI. Shay, there at the back.
Wait. So Shay from Ecom Cotton. Like I was saying, great presentation, guys. Very informative. Just a very general question. You know, how the whole world's moving forward in the way it is, very technology-based and AI-focused. Do you see a point where we are maybe a bit too over-reliant on these technologies and AI?
It's a fair point. I mean, I'm happy for you to jump in on that one, but for me, I think you kind of you over jump and then you correct. In my opinion, yes, there will come a time where I think we've gone too far, but everything finds its balance again. You know, look at the trading of the markets. You know, there's always things find their mean. Things find their way to revert back to how the industry wants to be run.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just one interesting example from the real world. When Airbnb, the digital platform, was introduced, there was a lot of concerns about whether the hotel industry is going to, crumble down. But we see that both the hotel industry and the Airbnb are coexisting peacefully with each other. But what has really happened is that those guys who wanted to find out an apartment for renting out in some locations, in some localities, because of the Airbnb impact, they are not able to rent out homes. So that is an unintended impact of the digital platform. But so there are some things that we keep correcting as we move forward and then, reassemble our thoughts.
And Joe, did you have
So I think we are going to over-rely on it. Absolutely. I think it'd be silly not to think that. Look at how we use our phones. We can't live in this world without phones anymore. It's already happened, over-reliance on tech. We just can't do it. AI is going to make that worse. But is that a problem? I think we're going to have better lives for it. We're going to do less boring jobs. My job's certainly easier, and I'm over-relying on code generators now. So I think, yeah, we will. And I don't see a massive problem in it. I think it's the same. If we look at history, we had internet that came. We didn't know what that was going to do. Yeah. Just improve people's lives, change people's jobs, for sure. But it's just a shift in movement. And they said that about the Industrial Revolution. Everything was to be automated, no jobs. I don't think this is any different. I think it's just one of those things we're going to become more reliant on. And I don't see, for myself, personal belief, I don't think there's a massive problem with it for me. So that's my answer. So I could say one more thing. So I think with jobs and taking over jobs, I don't think that's going to happen at all, especially for things like traders, especially in the short term.
There are some questions there.
So, sorry, we've had another question. I think the top one. How do you ensure the accuracy of the data that you use?
So accuracy of the data, so from the perspective of somebody collating data, I think you'd want someone technical to first look at the requirements of how your data looks like. So a data engineer, just to have a look to see, because you can have for example, WASD report, it's in a dated format. To bring that down into a database takes a bit of time because you've got to process it. So it's how you process the data, and it's pre-processing data. So that's essentially the first step. Any raw data can be messy. We're used to dealing with really messy data sets, so it wouldn't put me off if you've got messy data sets. It doesn't, it can be used. So it's the pre-processing. So you ensure that the data's good by pre-processing effectively, verifying it, and getting it into a nice stable format in order to be used and ingested by AI systems. So if we look at the accuracy that way. We firstly test the validity of it, and we try and rely on the best sources as well. Look for sources that are trustable and provide good outcomes. If it's working for predictives and it's actually doing the job, the data's working. If it's performing the outcome, is doing the job that you've asked it to do, and that you've given it the right data, then it's performed its task. So I think that's the way you can sort of do that, by verification steps.
So I suppose, in summary, you're saying you validate data accuracy by your models actually working.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly that.
Great. So will AI in Cotton rely on numerical data and statistics, or is it able to utilize market reports and commentary as well? I suppose this is a question on language.
Absolutely. So there's different types of AI. There's different forms of data, unstructured and structured data. So you've got image data, which we've worked on before, so those are the scratches of cars and things like that could be used. You can use numerical data, which is tabular data, in databases. And then you can use text data, and that's LLMs, all the ChatGPT, large language models. There's different types of data, different types of AI, and so you can absolutely use market reports, that kind of data as well. And we are actually doing it ourselves. So we typically, like an analyst platform that are using AI, will use a mix of those things to do different things. So we look at some examples. So say you want to utilize, predict the market based on media trends. So how would you do that? You'd go and find the best sources that are coming out regularly that say, I think the market's going this way. You can certainly extract information from that. For example, trying to figure out whether or not it's going bullish or bearish or what it thinks, and then taking those and putting it down into a model. That's something someone could do. So it uses a mixture of using an LLM to bring out semantics and then quantify the semantics and then apply AIs on it. That's something that, this is an example, but
LLM being
large language model.
So something like ChatGPT. It's an example there. So, Jagan, I suppose, how can AI help cotton to be more competitive against man-made fibers?
It can help tremendously, especially the precision agriculture part of it can help bring down the cost of cultivation and save resources to a great extent. So that is one major way in which it will help cotton to be more competitive. As far as the functionality is concerned, man-made fibers definitely have an advantage, but whether we can replicate the same in cotton, research will have to happen on the physical and the chemical part of it rather than on the AI part of it, but precision agriculture is definitely going to make a big change. We are already seeing that Brazil, with its cost of cultivation anywhere from 55 to 60, 62 cents, has gained market share significantly against the US. Their cost of cultivation is anywhere from 75 to 80 cents is what I understand. So the more cost competitive you are compared to the oil complex, the Brent and the WTI crude, and because MMF is a derivative of that fossil fuels, if you are cost competitive, naturally you have an advantage. That will be there.
Great, thank you. And what steps should small and medium-sized cotton producers take to implement AI technology effectively, considering their limited resources?
So from my perspective, firstly, just take a step. It's going to have to be a step, I think, because like I said, there's not many middlemen for these people, so it's going to have to come from one side, and the tech guys don't know about guys that are doing other things, so they're usually approached. So if there is a way to just take a step and firstly just start looking at the tools that are available from a Google search, what AI things are happening in cotton, what tools are available. There's plenty of them in market forecasting, so these things are appearing. And then, so as I said before, look at the data you have, look at the problems you have, and just type in AA consultant in Google and have a call with someone. There's no risk, because you can listen to them, and they might say, this is not for me. It's not providing any clear understanding. It's not giving me any trust or feeling about, it's worth the investment into AI, but they might turn around and give you actual metrics of like why they think it will save you X amount of money and this, and you can actually make a decision for yourself. So I don't think it's any risk. I don't think it's like make the jump into AI or not. It's just you can do it baby steps.
Yeah,
So,
I think the point about taking the baby step is important. You know, there are off-the-shelf solutions, as we mentioned earlier, things like legal review, all of these software and pieces of AI technology that people are building. For example, you know, there's an AI translation service that we've used with our software. They have a team of 10 people, but they can translate into 400, you know, so many different dialects to an incredible degree of accuracy. Now, that software is pretty cheap in the scheme of things. Why is it so cheap? Well, they've used an AI model that's made it replicable. They've got a solution to a problem that many people face. And because it's being sold at scale, they can sell it, you know, to 1 million people for $1. That works for them. If you've got a problem in a small to medium-sized business that you think is common to your industry, is common to other businesses, it's quite likely somebody, you know, if somebody may already be looking at it, and there may be an off-the-shelf solution that could be fit to your business. And while, yes, it might be a bit of a daunting thought to take that first step to invest in it, the returns will be tenfold because you've supercharged your team and your capacity with AI.
There are some interesting examples from the real world about how the small and medium farmers have benefited from digital technologies as such. I'm not just talking about AI. So Olam International, headquartered in Singapore, so they were running a project in Indonesia for the cocoa farmers, and majority of the cocoa farmers were small and medium sized. So the Olam made significant interventions as far as reaching out to the farmers, giving them the right inputs to help in price discovery, information inputs to help in price discovery, ensuring that the produce is bought through a certain process that is highly standardized and transparent. So there are interesting examples like that. So the question was that with the limited resources, how can the small and the medium-sized farmers embrace these technologies? You don't have to embrace these technologies by yourself. You can actually collaborate with well-intentioned stakeholders in the ecosystem, and then ultimately, if these systems are helping improve the transparency, the integrity, and the traceability part of it, ultimately it will end up as a win-win for both the partners in this process. So I don't think that the small and medium-sized farmers really have to be apprehensive that they will not be able to tap into these technologies.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, are there any other questions? I know we've already addressed the making man-made fibers more competitive. If there isn't, I'd like to ask one to both of you. How do you think, what role do you think the leaders of the cotton industry will play in transitioning over to AI? How do you think that we're going to find a good balance between the traditional way of doing things and technological advancements? And, you know, what do the people in the audience, what do the leaders need to consider?
I think maybe educate about what's going to happen, educate yourselves, the risks and what's coming. And then consider adopting it, because really you guys are the ones that are going to make the final decision of yes or no. Do we adopt it? Look at really what it can do for you, the benefits. It can definitely make some big impacts, and it's making a lot of impacts everywhere else. There's no reason we can't cotton. So educate yourself, be open-minded about it. Like, it's a lot of skepticism, but at least look into it. Like I said, just get on a call with somebody. And then make a decision, and then you can build trust with it, and then make your decision with more information, make a more informed decision about AI. And so, basic open-mindedness. So you guys are the guys that can make it happen, really. So it's sort of up to you.
And Jagan, from your perspective?
I believe it is also important to understand the pathway that is followed in this whole process of digital transformation. So the first and the easiest step will be to opt for something called as a digitization, where you are converting the analog task, all of them, into digital tasks. For example, some of you might be conducting customer surveys. Now, earlier you have to mail out a form to the customer and get its responses filled in. But now, when you are capturing the responses of the customers through the digital format itself, that is a classic example of digitization. It doesn't cost much, but you are prepping the organization for the digitalization and later digital transformation. Now, what is digitalization? What is the difference between digitalization and digitization? In digitalization, we are trying to automate the processes. So earlier, Joe made a very interesting point about some of the repetitive tasks where a lot of data is getting generated. Now, you can automate many of those processes. For example, in the textile industry for cutting, cutting leads to generation of a lot of waste. If inefficient people are doing it, unskilled people are doing it, then ultimately the bottom line contribution gets eroded. So there you can use robotics to do that. Another example of digitalization is employing the AI systems to do the fabric pattern matching, the fabric color matching, deciding on the composition of the dyes to be used in the textile industry. All of that can be done with the help of AI tools as part of the digitalization project. And then finally comes what we call as a digital transformation, which is radically altering the value proposition, the way in which you are generating value, the way in which you are creating value and delivering it to your customers. That is the final stage, but we need not worry about the final stage right now because we have a business to run in the real world. So we should start with digitization, progress towards digitalization, and then keep improving upon the learnings that we have. We will also encounter a lot of failures in this journey, but it is important to review it regularly and then take corrective measures with the help of experts like them.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for taking the time to come and watch our talk today.